talk to people about getting in control of their lives. Go figure, it happens. But there are elements that help with that. And I want to share some of the elements of grace that I want you to think about going and putting into practice before you go launch on a willpower program, okay? Let me promise you something. This is true of humans. You and I and any other human, we will rarely, if ever, fail in new ways. The old ones are working just fine. Just fine. If you look at your pattern of failure, and what I mean by failure is the areas of life that you have wanted to be different, the new vistas you've wanted to reach, the missions, the purposes, the accomplishments, the things with your family, the things in your relationship or your health, and you've intended them to go a certain way, and you haven't made it, you have probably gotten derailed in exactly the same way every time for the last 10, 20, 30, even more years. Because as Jesus said, that's the tree that produces the fruit. And where our character and our makeup needs to change to produce the fruit is where the focus needs to be. And until it changes, we will continue in the same old pattern. So how do we change that? Grace. And here's why. First element of grace that you need is you need a grace motivation. A grace motivation. Jack talked to you about writing your story and looking at it and seeing kind of what it looks like. Here's the next step I want you to take with that. I want you to write that story out to the future in 9 things you simply must do. I call this play the movie. And here's what it is. You take today's reality and what you've been doing and you play that forward because that's what you're going to continue to do if something doesn't change. And then you ask yourself the question, do I like the picture of where I'm headed? Do I like the end scene? The Bible does this all the time. There will be a banquet. There will be a reading. There will be a review of our lives. There'll be an interview with Christ. And there won't be a lot of excuses. He'll just play the video. And we'll have to decide, or we will be deciding, we'll be realizing, do I like the picture or not? So here's what I told the chairman of the board to tell that man. Here's what I want him to do. I want him to, the first assignment he has is he had 3 little kids. The youngest was a little girl. Sorry. Wake up. I have 2 little girls, so it touched me. I told him, I said, here's what I want you to do. Go write your 3-year-old little girl's biography. Starting tomorrow when mommy comes home and tells her, Daddy's not coming home. Daddy had a heart attack. Daddy died. And I want you to write that scene. And I want you to play it forward. And I want you to write what her junior high school years look like with no dad in the picture. And what her high school years look like when she's searching for daddy's love. And there are a lot of teenage boys coming around ready to give that in the way that they think it ought to happen. And she needs a father's guidance. And then I want you to write the scene of her wedding when you're not there. And then I want you to write your other kids similar stories. And then I want you to write your wife's biography starting tomorrow when she becomes a single parent. And she has to tell the kids, I'm not going to be home anymore. I've got to go to work. And she doesn't know what she's going to do. And also, we have to move away from your friends because we can't afford to live here anymore. And then I want you to write the story of your mission and your purpose that God has laid before you to achieve with your giftedness and where it is right now related to where, if you get crippled, it's going to be. And on and on. And then I want you to sit with that story for a while. Now let me tell you something. The Bible talks about 3 motivators that are the only ones that really work. And they're not guilt, and they're not shame, and they're not ought tos. Jack and I can stand up here and say, you ought to get in control of these areas of life. That's not going to do it. We could make you feel guilty. That's not going to do it. But when he looks at his daughter's life, that will make him sorry, because it taps into three of the most powerful motivators. What you want and desire, number one. What you love, and number three, what you have to lose. 1 Corinthians 3 says that we will count it loss. We will experience loss. We'll experience, as we go through the fire, if it all burns up, there will be a real loss if we don't play the movie of what we're doing now in regards to our mission, our health, our families, the whole banana. But you can also write another story, and you can keep that before you. I want to go to the banquet and be in the celebration where he says, well done, good and faithful servant. And I want to picture the scenes of my kids growing up with somebody healthy, and a marriage and a family that becomes a light for the neighborhood and the community. So grace gives us a proper motivation, and you need somebody to tell your story to before the 3 days are up, perhaps. Number two, life only changes when we bring structure and discipline from the outside. Structure and discipline from the outside. Let me give you a rule that God has set up in the universe about your mind and your soul and spirit. What was once external becomes internal. What was once external becomes internal. That's why I said to this guy, look, if he doesn't have somebody else's structure or a structured class or a program or somebody going with him where he has their discipline that he can internalize, he won't walk around with it and have it later. He'll just continue to flounder. It's like a computer. If you don't download the software, then it won't run. So, what you've got to do is you've got to figure out in these areas of life that I haven't been able to pull off, I've got to find some external structure like a boot camp that surrounds me and tells me what time to get up and tells me what time lights are out and all the examples he gave. But we're not just talking about exercise in life. We may be talking about other areas. Some of you are good at physically fit, and instead of connecting with the family, you'll go on a 3-hour jog. You need a structure that makes you put it down and go look your 8-year-old in the eye or your team. I talked to a president of a publishing company in New York a few months ago who had to do some layoffs. And he said, one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I said, the layoff? He said, no. He said, I decided in the layoff that I was going to go talk to certain people at a certain level myself and call them in and tell them the story because it was going to be bad news. And I, as the president, wanted to do it. And I called a man in and I explained the situation. He looks down for a while and he looks up and he says, you know what? This isn't hard, being laid off. I mean, it's hard. I got to find a new job. I'll find a new job. What you're doing is not hurting me. I don't want you to feel bad about it. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I do want you to feel. And that is what hurts me more than this layoff is for a year I've worked 4 offices down. And I pass you all the time. And you never once asked me anything about me or how I'm doing. That hurts me. That guy that day told me that it was a wake-up moment where he had to add some external structure and some people holding him accountable to how's he checking in with all the people in his life. He was disciplined to work out. He wasn't disciplined relationally. Let me give you some practical examples of this. Get a group together when you go back on Monday. Don't start this, Pilates on Monday, breakfast on Monday. On Monday, have a small group together of 3 or 4 other people that are committed to this with each other, and you're going to set up a time and you're going to meet together, and it's going to be regular. Don't do it with one buddy because you can shine each other on. A cord of 3, Ecclesiastes says, or even more, is stronger. Number 2, get a regular time that's structured for whatever of these in this list you put together, And you go there and you meet with that group, and the only time you don't is if you're gone or dead. You know, if you're out of town, certainly you can't do it. But you guys have got to make this, because you have to internalize the discipline.